One.
Hello, welcome to the Board of Health meeting of October 5th, 2020. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chairman. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Chatham Board of Health is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number previously posted and on the screen. The call-in number is 1-508-945-4410, and the conference ID is 392-720-75#. Thank you, and I'll turn this over to Chairman Beckley.
Thank you, Judy. First thing I'd like to do is call roll to establish which Board of Health members are on the call tonight. Dr. Noble Hanson, are you on the call?
Yes.
Ron Broman, are you on the call?
Yes.
Ed Sheehan, are you on the call?
Yes.
And I'm on the call. So we have 4 members of the Board of Health on the call, giving us our quorum.
Hey, John, it's Alan. I'm listening.
Okay, well, then why don't you just be on the call?
No, because I didn't do my homework.
Okay, you're just going to audit for now. Okay.
Right.
Very, very good. Tonight we have really one hearing and 2 other agenda items. So let's start with the first hearing, which is a variance hearing from nitrogen loading regulation for David DePasquale at 115 Perch Pond Road, Rick Roy Construction being the applicant. If somebody's got an open mic there, we're hearing background. That's better. Rick, do you want to introduce your application?
Yes, my name is Rick Roy, and I'm representing Dave DePasquale for a variance from the nitrogen loading regulations for 115 Perch Pond Road. The applicant is proposing to put on an in-laws apartment, which is going to include, based upon some of the floor plans that you might see for that lower level, an addition of a bedroom as well as a kitchen. We're scheduled to go before Zoning Board of Appeals on October 22nd. Additionally, the reason why we're requesting a variance is that the sewer line has been installed in front of Mr. DePasquale's property, and we know that the hookup might be anywhere from 6 months to a year away based upon when the town takes over the line. But what we're proposing to do is add on the addition as well as reconfigure the basement lower level and be able to use the existing septic system until such time as we can hook into the town sewer. We have already made application to the sewer commission in order to be able to get the additional bedroom, and that's already in process. So if I don't know that there's anything else you need to know from me, okay, I will say, Judy, okay, that we're putting this addition on a slab. There's no basement or anything else under it. We're within a couple of feet of the 20-foot setback requirement for the existing septic system, but that's going to be abandoned anyway. So I don't know that that causes you any issue or not.
All right, thank you, Rick. Questions, comments from Board of Health members to Rick Roy?
Ron Broman, this seems a clear, easy one for us. That's any problems.
It's pretty straightforward indeed. It's true, Judy, that you can validate the statement that the sewer line is been placed in the street and it is on track to be used before too long.
Yeah, I understand that they have been working in that neighborhood. Maybe Bob can verify that it has already been installed, but I know it's very close.
Yeah, John, it's Bob Duncanson. Yes, the sewer line has been installed on that street. The contractor is on schedule to finish up everything by the end of the year. The only thing that's holding us up right now is they have to complete the pump station on Perch Pond, but that's due for completion this fall. So yeah, sometime right around the first of the year, I anticipate the sewer line will be able to go active.
That's good. And Rick, how long will it take to build the addition?
Well, basically what we've done is we're going to, we can't even get, we won't be through the zoning board of appeals until the 22nd of October. Given that it's probably going to be another 6 weeks after that, okay, before we even get the building permit, like between the 20-day cooling off period for zoning board of appeals and then the permit process. So we won't even be finished with the addition before we could probably hook up to the sewer.
Okay, but that was the point I was trying to make, that the timing of this is probably going to be that the sewer is available before the occupancy is ready.
Right. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is this was a 3-bedroom house for Dave DePasquale and Tammy, and they had 2 children who no longer are residing at home any longer, so they're empty nesters. So there's not a lot of use taking place there anyway, so.
Okay. And ADUs are good for the community. We all know that. I think we agree on that. Can I get a motion from a board member to approve the application?
Ed G. and I'd approve that.
Can I get a second?
Noble, I'll second.
Okay, Noble on the second. Anybody? Now the motion to approve should include the stipulation that certain conditions be met. True?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll take that amendment.
Do
Any-
do you want me to read the suggested conditions?
Sure.
Yeah.
The existing septic system should be inspected and pumped. The applicant should restrict the property to a maximum of 4 bedrooms and record this restriction on the deed at the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds. The engineer shall submit an engineered as, no, we'll skip that one. The property is connected to town sewer within 180 days of being so ordered. So it would be, there would be 3 conditions.
Okay, so number 1, 2, and 4?
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay, all right. Does anybody from the public wish to comment before the Board of Health votes on this motion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. When I call your name, please indicate how you would vote on the motion to approve. Dr. Hanson?
Approve.
Ron Broman?
Approve.
Ed Sheehan?
Approve.
And I vote to approve. So that's 4-0. The motion is approved. Okay, you're good to go, Rick.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Item 2 on the agenda is our update and a discussion regarding COVID-19 with Dr. Robert Duncanson. Dr. Duncanson?
Good afternoon, members of the board and members of the public listening in. So just quickly to run through, currently, as of this afternoon, we are over at 35 million cases of COVID-19 worldwide. We are currently at 1,038,000 and some change in terms of the number of deaths worldwide. For the US, we are over 7.4 million cases. The US is still number 1. The number 2 country is now India at 6.6 million cases. In terms of the number of deaths, the U.S. has a little over 210,000. The number 2 country in terms of the deaths is Brazil at 146,000. In Massachusetts, as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, the latest numbers, we currently have 135,462 confirmed and probable cases. And we have 9,530 deaths, either confirmed or probable. In Barnstable County, we are currently at 1,827 confirmed cases. And we are at 174 deaths. In Chatham, we are holding at 34 cases and the 2 deaths that we've been reporting on for several months. So we haven't recorded any new cases in Chatham in the last week or so. Just to touch base on a couple of other topics of note. Starting today, October 5th, communities that are not in the state's ranking of high-risk communities, of which Chatham is one. We've been in the gray zone or the low-risk category for the last 3 weekly state updates. Those communities, basically the communities in the low-risk categories, are now able to enter into phase 3, step 2. We had been in phase 3, step 1. Effective today, low-risk communities are able to go into phase 3, step 2. And so basically what that means is a number of additional business categories are allowed to open. Things like, hang on while I get to the specific page here. Indoor performance venues such as concert halls, theaters, and other performance spaces not designated as phase 4. I don't think we really have any particular ones in Chatham that will apply, but in other places we do. As well as things like laser tag, roller skating, trampolines, and obstacle courses that take place indoors. So those are really the major changes in terms of reopening additional businesses that took effect today. In addition, there were some changes with the governor's gathering rule. Indoor gatherings are still limited to 25 people in a single enclosed space. However, there have been some changes for outdoor gatherings. Outdoor gatherings at private residences and other spaces are still limited to 50 people. Outdoor gatherings at event venues and in public settings, places like clubs, parks, and areas like that. In lower risk communities, there's been an increase from 50 up to 100 people. Face coverings are still required for any gathering of more than 10 people, where some of those participants are not in the same household. So if you have a gathering of 11 people and you're all in the same household, face masks are not required. But if you have the same gathering of 11 people and some of those are not of your immediate family unit, face coverings are required. So those were the primary changes that came about as of the transition into step 2 of phase 3. Just a couple of other things I wanted to touch on. The state did issue some guidance on Halloween last week. There wasn't any real substantial change to it other than reiterating the guidance that CDC had previously sent out the week before regarding Halloween guidance. So I would urge anyone who's interested in that to go online to either the state's website or the DPH website, and you can get that information on Halloween activities. Basically, CDC is recommending avoidance of any high-risk activities, bobbing for apples. In general, they are recommending against trick-or-treating. at individual homes and things like that. And they give some suggestions for some other Halloween activities that can be done safely and still keep to the spirit of the holiday. So, and then just the other thing I wanted to pass along to the Board of Health with regard to testing. They came up during our DPH call last Friday. And it has to do with testing of individuals that have completed the 10-day isolation or the 14-day quarantine period, because there's been some questions as to whether or not those people should, say, undergo testing before they return to work or school. And basically, if someone has completed the 10-day isolation period or the 14-day quarantine period, and the difference is the isolation period is for those people that have tested positive for COVID-19, and the 14-day quarantine period is for those people that have been identified as close contacts. So if someone has successfully completed those periods of time, the DPH is indicating that there's really no added value to retest those individuals for COVID-19. And the reason for that is, even after someone has finished their 10-day quarantine period, they likely will continue to be COVID positive by test up to 2 or 3 months afterwards. But the critical information is that generally they're only shedding active viral particles for up to 8 or 9 days. So while you may have a COVID positive test for, say, a month or 2 or potentially up to 3 afterwards, you were not considered infectious except for 8 or 9 days after you were first identified. And so with that COVID positive test result extending out for longer periods of time, there's really no redeeming value for testing someone who has completed those mandatory time-based periods of either 10 days or 14 days. So with that, as I said, DPH is not recommending a COVID test for somebody who's completed those periods prior to returning to work or going back to school. Now, individual businesses or school districts can require it based on their own internal policies, but from a public health perspective, there is no real overriding value to have that done, because we now know that somebody is still likely, if they had COVID-19, they will still likely give a positive test for an extended period of time, even though they are not infectious to those around them. So I think that's all I've got to report on today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bob, for that most recent update regarding the test clearing. I think that's important for us all to understand. I didn't realize that was the current recommendation and why. So thank you for that. But
Bob, could I ask you one question, Ron Brodman?
Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, my pet peeve is obviously the transfer station. I go up there and, I have a blood condition, so I have to be very careful what I do. And there's so many people up there without masks, and I've said things to them, and, they just said, what is the fine and how would that be enforced?
The fine is up to $300.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be enforced by police officers, by your health agent, by myself. The difficulty is we would have to, it's kind of like running the stop sign.
Yeah, I know.
The actual enforcing entity would have to actually observe it. So we couldn't take secondhand information, if you will. We couldn't act on, a phone call that says, hey, I just saw Joe Blow, not wearing a mask at the transfer station. We would have to actually observe the violation in order to issue the fine.
So really, it's hopeless to get, to do anything about it.
This is John. We could do something about it. And that something is that the man that's sitting in the little house would stand outside of the house, and when each car comes in, he would ask them to open the window, and he'd clearly indicate to them that unless they have a mask, they have to leave. I mean, I went there the other day, and the man nodded to me, but he didn't do anything to indicate that he had any interest in it. I think they could step up compliance just by making it protocol at the greeting house there, that somebody remind people that they have to show a mask and wear it before they get in.
Because sooner or later, the police will be called up there because these people don't like it when I tell them they should put their mask on. You know, a couple of them are pretty good, you know, like you said before, it's lucky I'm 6'5", even though I'm 77 years old. You know, I still say to them, you know, put the mask on. I said, I have one on for you. You got to put one on for me. There they go. You know. Now, would it be possible for a member of the Board of Health to be able to give out a fine?
I don't think you want to go there, Ron.
It doesn't bother me. I mean, if I get the virus from some Joe Blow up there, I'm not going to be, you know, very happy.
Yeah, I mean, technically, members of the Board of Health can enforce your own order. You know, whether or not you want to take that action or not is up to you. I mean, we could certainly, you know, provide ticket books and training and whatnot if you're interested. I would be happy to reach out to the DPW director at the board's request and ask them, you know, ask him to coordinate with his staff in becoming, you know, more informative to the public. I don't recall. I know we took the variable message board that was there and moved it. I don't know if it's been restored back there, but I could certainly follow up on that as well to hammer the point home. But, you know, I think unfortunately what we're seeing is, you know, the problem that we're seeing all over the world. You know, the longer this goes on, you know, some people just get, you know, kind of lackadaisical, if you will. You know, and it's a constant battle to keep it in, you know, the forefront. Wear a mask, social distance, wash your hands, kind of thing. You know, people are just kind of, you know, not getting tired of the message, but, you know, they're getting tired of the message.
Yeah,
I'll let you know, Bob, if I want to do that. Okay, I'll let you know.
Okay, and I will, you know, unless the board directs otherwise, I will reach out to the DPW director and ask him to, you know, have his people become a little bit more aggressive with the enforcement side of things.
Bob,
Passing message on.
This is John. In a nice way, they could just, you know, hail down each car that comes in, have them open the window, and have them in a nice way say, "Do you have your mask with you?"
Yeah.
You know, and please put it on because you know we have, you know, this is the town requirement.
Yep.
Now, if you wanted to do even more, we could have a box of masks in that little house, and if somebody comes and doesn't have one, he could issue him one, and say in the future, be sure and bring this with you.
Yeah, they were issued disposable masks earlier. I have not had a request from them. They're out, so I suspect they still have that box sitting in the you know, the booth somewhere.
Okay. I think that's worth a try to try and just step up some friendly reminders.
Okay, I will reach out to the DPW director and request that they do that.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, this is Noble. Bob, do we have an idea of how many active cases there are in Chatham right now?
When I looked this afternoon, quite honestly, I don't think we have any active cases. I think everyone has either cleared their 14-day quarantine period or they've cleared their 10-day isolation period. So I don't believe at this moment we are tracking any active cases.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Very good, Bob. Thank you for that report. Any other questions for Dr. Duncanson before we move to the item 3 agenda? Okay, let's go into the a discussion on the emergency order for restaurants. Judy, you sent out to everyone a revision of the initial wording of the initial draft. Everybody get that?
I sent it out. I can put it up on the screen. We had some problems uploading it into the My Town Government, so if it's okay with you, I can put it up on the screen as well.
Okay, sure.
Hey, John, just a little background. So at the board's last meeting and in your joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, there was some discussion about requiring public notification by restaurants and food service establishments when they had a COVID positive case. So you asked staff to draft something up, which Judy did. I reviewed it. We also asked town council to weigh in on it. So what you see on the screen and what was presented as part of your packet is the latest draft that has, you know, basically all town council's comments in it, as well as some edits I made. We did include a couple of notes that we left in there for you to consider. The first one being, when we put this together, we had arbitrarily used 96 hours for maintaining the posting. But that was just an arbitrary number and so we left it, you know, that way with a note that, you know, for your consideration. And then the second part of it was reiterating the mandatory 24-hour closure, which is currently in the state's guidance. Judy put that in there. We both agreed that, you know, we'd put it in, but it basically reiterates what's already in the state's guidance, so it's not necessarily absolutely required. And our version talks about employees and staff. The DPH version also calls out patrons and vendors, which is not in ours. So we added that, or I added that note in there again, just for you guys to think about and you know, talk about. So that's what you've got in front of you for your consideration. Judy, I don't know if you want to weigh in with anything else.
No, I think, you know, that's what we put together. I did add the 24-hour closure thing because I think it would help solidify that idea in the restaurants' minds. But basically, we just need to discuss and see if this is the type of thing you're looking for.
Noble, why don't you raise the question you had about the wording on the cleaning?
Yeah, this is Noble. So just back up a sec. So I understand that town council felt it was okay if the Board of Health ordered that the restaurant name be publicly disclosed if they have an employee who's positive. That he was okay with making that additional step. Is that correct?
Yes, as long as we, you know, are careful to not identify any people,
Right.
Staff positions, things like that, that could identify them. I think it will be fine.
Okay, great. We can talk about the 96 hours in a sec. We reiterated the 24-hour closure, and then it's the line establishment management, well, COVID-19. There's a clause that says, and following the 24-hour closure, they shall deep clean. So the question that came up in my mind was, before it was the understanding, I think, was they had to close for 24 hours, and during that time they could deep clean and then open up in 24 hours. The wording here says they close for 24 hours and then they deep clean and then they open. So they might be closed 48 hours. So that's kind of a step up from what we were doing before. And I think that is there an idea that helps with this order, or that it was intentional, or just something up for discussion?
I think it was intentional because originally my understanding was that DPH and CDC were requiring that they close for 24 hours so that anybody coming in to clean would not be exposed to anything in the air. So that was the way I had understood it. And then after they were closed for 24 hours, they could then come in safely and clean all the surfaces.
Okay, this is John. So that's an explanation of why it would make sense to do it one after the other.
Yes, and they, typically they don't need another. They might need 12 hours. I mean, I think these places are cleaning quickly. They get these teams in, then they've got the place cleaned in probably under 8 hours.
Okay.
Hey, John, it's Bob.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will tell you, or I'll tell the board, the guidance from the state has actually changed in what was there before versus what took effect starting today. Because the original, or not the original, but prior to today, the language in the state's guidance safety standards said, in the event of a presumptive or actual positive COVID-19 case of a worker, patron, or vendor, the restaurant must be immediately shut down for 24 hours and then must be cleaned and disinfected in accordance with current CDC guidance before reopening. The wording in the updated that took effect today says, in the event of a presumptive or actual positive COVID-19 case of a worker, patron, or vendor, the restaurant must shut down for a deep cleaning and disinfecting. So the 24-hour requirement is no longer there.
It's
And
just
I think,
that
that was a reflection of, what we had experienced earlier, where if a restaurant has an issue, they are immediately, closing down, calling in the third party cleaning company and doing what they need to do. So I think, that's why that change in the guidance has taken place, that there's not necessarily a benefit to that 24-hour closure period.
so they could then theoretically on an overnight get a professional cleaning crew in there, deep clean, disinfect, and be ready to reopen the next day.
Conceivably, yes.
Which is kind of what we've seen. Basically what the Squire did the first time, their first case.
Yeah, we saw the same thing with Chatham Bars Inn as well. They closed down and they immediately brought the cleaning crew in overnight to get it done.
What is deep clean and disinfect in comparison to cleaning and disinfecting?
It's basically on top of their normal cleaning floors and food contact surfaces, and now they're going to add all high-touch surfaces, doors, door handles, equipment handles, everything that they wouldn't necessarily clean every day. They might clean it, but they wouldn't necessarily disinfect it. So usually it's going to include some type of a disinfecting, fogging, spraying all the surfaces.
Would it cover chairs and booths and stuff like that?
I would assume so, yes.
Yes, for the fogging, it's generally the entire interior, if you will. So yes, it would cover the chairs, the tables, booths, anything like that.
And this fogging process involves special equipment that atomizes a disinfectant?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So in light of what Bob just read, which I did not realize, if we add this 24 hours closure, we'd be more restrictive than what the state's requiring.
Right. And I think we should reflect the most recent state language there.
This is Noble. Yeah, I think, I'm kind of, I think that for the sake of having things uniform and giving the restaurant time to assess and do its contact tracing themselves, and make it sort of a uniform procedure throughout the restaurants, that the 24-hour closure makes sense, as long as we're not going too far. It's what has existed. And then, I might say, in light of the state's new guidance, that we wouldn't say close 24 hours and then deep clean after, but allow them to deep clean when they want, but they must be closed 24 hours. And that gives them time to do their own contact tracing, their own employees, post things on the door, and then it's uniform for every restaurant. That's what I'm thinking.
That sounds reasonable.
Ron Broman, I got one question. When we close them down for cleaning, is that considered as a deep cleaning, or do you have to specify that?
I think it's assumed it's a deep cleaning. I mean, that language is in there somewhere.
Okay, so it's assumed it's a deep cleaning. Okay.
So Noble, so you're suggesting that we leave the 24-hour rule of closure in for a variety of reasons, including an opportunity to just pause and reflect on what's going on, an opportunity to not only do the cleaning, but to also initiate the contact tracing discussion and the notification.
The contact tracing that the employer does.
Yes.
If VNA comes in later, that might be, days, but gives the employer, and they tell those employees to stay home. That might be difficult in an overnight reopening, I think.
Right. It gives them some time to do what they need to do.
And it's also uniform with every restaurant. We're treating them the same. The process is similar.
What do other board members think about that?
Edgy, and I think of it, if that's all possible, that would be something to do.
Yeah, so the wording would be changed to say following the 24-hour closure. It would be, they'd be required to be closed for 24 hours.
And to do a deep clean.
And to do a deep clean prior to reopening.
Yes, and then they can do the deep clean when they want.
Yeah, I would take out and following the 24-hour closure, they shall deep clean.
Right.
I would keep the deep clean and disinfect, but as part of the 24-hour closure time period.
Yeah, this is Noble, and I mean, this just for the discussion, I would say Chatham does not have a problem or any trigger event right now. But if we look back, the area where we have had cases over the summer, the number one place is restaurants. So that's why we're focusing a little bit more on the restaurants and keeping the 24-hour closure in. I think that's a rationale for doing that.
I'm fine with it. I mean, there's a logic to that. I don't think we would need to, but I do think there's a logic to it.
This is Noble. I had another question of Judy and Bob. So actually, I think it's good that we're telling the employer, the restaurant, to make the public notice and put a notice on the door, which I think is good. That lets residents make their own decision.
It doesn't say that. It does not say that.
It says posting a written notice.
At the establishment.
It says physically posting a written notice thereof at the establishment.
Well, I think we should, I had questions about, well, what does that mean? They could post it inside by the register. I think it should be posted at the door.
We can be more specific, sure.
I mean, I just,
Yeah,
at the entranceway in a clearly visible way, because
I think that's good language.
I mean, nobody should be able to go in that restaurant and walk in and without seeing it.
Hey, John, Noble said it was good language. I'm just not clear on what language he was referring to.
I was referring to John's recommendation that the posting be on the outside of a door or window so the public, walking by could see the notice. They don't have to enter the restaurant to find the notice.
Okay.
A written notice,
On the exterior of the building, on the main door entrance, or what?
I've
pleasure?
I've
Main
heard
door
of
entrances.
that in a conspicuous location at the entranceway.
Okay, by
probably one
physically posting a written notice.
Or you could literally say on the front door, and
I would say at each entrance, because they, like the Squire, you can enter 3 different places.
That's a good point.
And that's, not a big burden.
At a conspicuous location at each entranceway. We just want to make sure that the posting is done in a way that does the job.
Does it specify when that posting has to be put up? In other words,
Immediately, yeah,
immediately? Okay.
I think so, right?
Yeah, if they're going to be closed immediately, they would have to be posting that immediately at the time of closing.
In a conspicuous location at each entrance.
Well, here's what I have. Here's what I scribbled down for rewording. So all food service establishments shall notify the public of the incidence of any confirmed positive case of COVID-19 among its employees and staff by physically posting, conspicuously at each entrance, a written notice thereof.
Perfect.
Blah, blah, blah. Is that where
Yep.
you're heading?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. Mr. Noble, I had a question. So this mandates that the restaurant makes a public disclosure. Is the town making any disclosure? Is it on? I'm just questioning. I'm just asking, thinking. A website release, is that then not necessary?
No.
Burden on the restaurant, or does the town do something in addition? I'm just asking, I guess.
I think the town, this is John, I think the town should concurrently post on its town website. Don't you, Bob?
We, in this case, the way this is worded, we're putting the burden on the restaurant to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think potentially if we're also doing it, there may be pushback from the rest of the community, if you will, in terms of the Chamber of Commerce and all about us, posting that kind of information on our website. I'm not saying we can't, but I'm just, I think there might be some concern that, all of a sudden now Chatham's going to be looked on negatively, because remember, this is going above and beyond what the state requires. No other community, that we're aware of in the Commonwealth has gone this direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm all for the public health, but I also have the role of looking at it from all sides if I can.
So I guess the question is, does the establishment doing the posting themselves accomplish the public health awareness that is the reason we're doing this? And I guess it does for any prospective patrons that decide to go there the next day, and they will see that there's a positive. It's an interesting question. I don't, I would just think that the town website should accurately reflect, what the COVID situation is in the town. I don't see the need for the town to do it immediately, but I would think within a couple of days it should be reflected.
There's Noble. Yeah, I understand what Bob's saying and thinking there. I don't know. I just feel funny sometimes when people hear about the restaurant through, the Chronicle, or an email blast and not in some public way, and they feel like, they haven't been fully informed by the town. I don't know that, I think if it's posted on the door when you walk in, I think the purpose is done. But the other situation is a little odd sometimes.
Yeah, if you're going to go in that direction, and I'm not saying don't, I think we need to modify paragraph 1 then to add a stipulation that at the time of posting, the establishment also has to notify the health division, because I could think of a scenario where they have an employee who tests positive, the restaurant posts that notice, but the employee is not a Chatham resident, so we wouldn't necessarily get notified of it right away. So the restaurant could be closed because somebody that works for them, but lives in Brewster, Orleans, Harwich, Plymouth, or wherever, was the positive test. So we wouldn't get notified of it here. So we wouldn't necessarily know. But if at the same time that they are required to post it on the establishment, they're also required to notify the health division, then we would get that notification in a timely manner.
They're not required to do that now, Bob?
They are supposed to under the state's guidelines. They're supposed to let us know, but I think this might be a little bit different just because you're requiring them, the way this is worded, they have to immediately do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, most of our restaurants are pretty good and they let us know right away when they have an issue.
I thought they were required by reporting regulations to let us know, but maybe not.
This is Noble. Yeah, maybe we can. I thought that it was mandated by the state that the restaurant report a positive employee to the local board of health. So if there's some ambiguity there, I would suggest that be reiterated in an early paragraph here, that's an additional burden on them.
Yes, they are required to let us know, but sometimes they don't do it right away. So I think you're right. We could add in that first paragraph that they also need to notify as soon as they know of a confirmed case. They have to notify the local board of health.
Yeah, I'm just reading the state's guidance, and I think I just found the section. I think we're okay. It says if the employer is notified of any positive case at the workplace, the employer must immediately notify the local board of health in the city or town where the workplace is located.
Perfect.
And that's the important language.
Right, and this is Noble. So we can just reiterate that in an early paragraph of this order, can't we?
Yeah, you can certainly repeat it. Absolutely.
All right, good.
I mean, we could just do that after
Okay.
where in between where it starts the last sentence, if you will. They have to post it on their website, and then we could just repeat the language from the state's guidance before how long the notice has to be posted. So we could just slip it right in between there.
And then this is Noble again. So did we decide that the town would also disclose it publicly somehow in an appropriate way?
We did not decide that yet.
The town, it would be permissive to the town to do so if they wanted to have the town website be current and update and complete. But we did not mandate that the town would immediately then update the website in any particular way.
I mean, I'm open, but I think that some kind of an appropriate town disclosure is good, because like I say, otherwise, residents hear about it from, an email blast from the Chronicle, and it just doesn't seem right. It seems like the town could appropriately give out that information. I mean, they have to post it on their front door. I don't think that's a lot more invasive of them from a business standpoint.
If anything, it could be worded in a way that acknowledged that the restaurant is taking the appropriate actions.
Yeah, some language that, public relations language that's.
I mean, it just could acknowledge the town has recently received a report from XYZ restaurant regarding blah, blah, blah. They have also advised that they are proceeding with the required posting and, disinfection, and so that it reflects well on their response. I tend to agree with you, Noble, that the town website should be the official.
Yeah, this is Noble again. Yeah, so I just, I'm kind of open here, but I would be interested in, do Bob and Judy feel comfortable with the, health department doing that town disclosure?
Ooh,
I think if we notify that,
it's not something we usually do when we have an issue at a restaurant, but I think we could. I mean, it might be something we want to check with town council, but we could add it to our COVID website. Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I just tried to call town council, and I'm actually typing an email out to him right now to see what his thoughts are. I don't know if I'll get an answer this afternoon or not, but I'll try.
Okay.
I don't think we necessarily need to add it to this emergency order. We can decide whether we're going to do it afterwards, but if we get this in place, then
I agree, and so we can pass this today and then add that later if we need, once we get.
Or just do it,
Or just do it.
yeah, Ron Broman, I think
Having checked with the council. Okay.
Correct.
okay. Ron Broman, I think if it's worded in such a way that these people have met what they were supposed to do, they closed and everything, not saying they didn't do a good job, they did what they were asked to do, and here, that's all. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They closed down this and that. This is the restaurant.
They're being responsive and responsive.
Yeah, they're being responsive. Not saying, oh, this terrible restaurant closed down. Just that they have been closed down, but they're responsive to meet on, the Board of Health needs.
Right. No misunderstandings.
The only reason to do it, to post it on our website, would be for those people that may have eaten there a day before, or within 48 hours prior to the person testing positive, who may have concerns, and they may not see it because they're not in town, or they may not see it on their Facebook page or whatever. So that would be, because we do get those calls. I heard that this happened, and they want to know.
And this is John, that's a good reason, because if you don't happen to have seen the sign on the restaurant door, but you heard a rumor that it was, you might otherwise tend to go to the website of the town and see whether it's valid.
Yeah.
Right, and then we could provide them with the information that is important for them to know at that time.
Exactly, the facts.
Yeah, that's noble. Yeah, I agree with what Judy just said. I think that's a good rationale, but we can pass it without that clause now, and then we can add that after it's checked more. Is that what we're saying?
It can be town
Yeah,
policy. Town policy.
Yeah, we could just do it as a
Oh,
policy.
policy. Okay, great. That I had, if we're ready to move on, I'm not sure, but then the last thing is the 96 hours that they have to post. So Bob said that was just kind of a number put in there to at the moment, and so that's 4 days, and I'd be interested in what people are thinking about that, longer or shorter. Probably not shorter.
I think Bob just picked that kind of as an arbitrary number.
Yeah. When, Judy, how soon does the VNA start doing their contact tracing? Usually.
As soon as they get notified of a case, which is usually comes through Maven, or occasionally if we know about it before, if the restaurant, say, called me and said such and such a person tested positive, here's their name and phone number, I can forward that to the VNA, and they can start the contact tracing right then, as soon as they can get in touch with the person. So, you know, it's usually fairly quick if we know about it. We may know about it before the state lab does even, so it would be even quicker. But if they have to wait to get it confirmed, or they don't hear about it until they get the confirmation from the state lab, then it might take a day or so.
Judy, this is John Beckley. I have a question. How consistent is it that a restaurant will identify the same close contacts themselves after a new case versus the VNA going in there and then arriving at a different set of close contacts?
It's hard to say. I don't think it's terribly consistent because the VNA is going to talk to the actual person who was positive and ask them very specifically who you were with, who would be considered a close contact, someone who was within 6 feet of you for 15 minutes or more, or even, 10 minutes for over several hours. It kind of depends on the situation, but it's usually 15 minutes within 6 feet. So it's kind of up to what the person tells them. The VNA will also usually reach out to the restaurant itself and try to get a list from them as well. So they do try to work together. They do call the restaurant directly.
So how confident are we as public health advocates that the bona fide, legitimate close contacts will be effectively identified and excluded from a facility before they themselves could become infectious to patrons?
I mean, I'm fairly confident. I think a lot of these places, they're, maybe excluding people that aren't really close contacts, but by virtue of definition, but maybe worked with the person, like behind a bar or in the kitchen, and they may exclude them. So I think that we should be pretty confident in what the VNA is trying to get out of the restaurant as far as who are the close contacts. I mean, there's really no way to know.
Right.
Yeah, John, as Judy said, I mean, you're really dependent on, information that you're getting from people. Somebody's just been identified with COVID-19. You sit down with them, you try to ferret out, all the people they've been with, but in the end, you're depending on their recollections and their interpretations and everything else. So, it's not like, okay, tell us everybody that wore green because they're the ones at risk. Well, unfortunately, it's not black and white like that.
Right.
So is the system 100% foolproof? Absolutely not. I mean, occasionally, as Judy said, we may be keeping people out of the workplace that don't need to be, and, you may miss somebody, but, that's just the fact that we're relying on human, recollection and whatnot.
Yep.
So it's not 100% foolproof, and I think for anybody to think that it's going to be is being naive. I did hear back from town council. He said there's no issue as long as we don't reveal any individual names of restaurant staff. So if we just do the name of the restaurant, that's okay.
Okay.
Good. This is Noble. I would say that the period of time of the posting, I mean, this process takes sort of an ill-defined number of days to work out. I don't think keeping the posting up additional days is a big burden, added to what's already happened. And so I'm just throwing out there, why not keep it posted for a week? That lets things settle out and there'd be more information. I don't think it's a big extra burden to the restaurant because by that time everybody will already know about it. So I would just suggest keep the posting for a week.
Can I ask a question? Ron Gorman, can I ask a question? When you mentioned that you cannot name the person, but you can name the position.
You can't.
For example, I remember in the last one, I won't name the restaurant's name, but they said a bartender at such and such a place.
You can't do that, Ron.
Well, they did the last time.
I think we do need to be more careful than that and not name the position.
Okay,
You can't.
Good.
Because that's
creeping
creeping towards the HIPAA. That creeps towards a potential HIPAA violation.
Right. Oh, I agree. But it was in the last one, and as long as it's not, that's all.
Judy, I've got a question before I forget. If we get a newly identified case of COVID in an employee in a restaurant, and we are talking with the restaurant owner, or do we have any way of giving them a handout on what a close contact definition is, and when they make their initial decision to exclude, that they're following something that's based upon science or something we've given them?
I believe the VNA does give them some information like that. I can double check. I'm sure there is some handouts to that effect.
But my point is, very, very quickly in this process, the first thing that happens, it would seem to me, is not only the identified person who's sick is excluded, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the restaurant will make its initial assessment of other employees to be excluded very quickly because the restaurant thinks they're close contacts. And then after that, following that, a day or two or three later, the VNA comes through. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I hope it wouldn't be more than 2 days. I would hope it'd be within 24 hours that the VNA would be actively involved. But yeah, we definitely could provide, when we first talk to them, some written information for their employees.
Just a paragraph about how they can immediately initiate an initial close contact review. Give them some guidance on how to approach that, because they're not going to know.
Right. Maybe we can work on that.
Before you wrap this up, I would like to ask a few questions. Elaine Gibbs.
Okay, we're not quite there yet, Elaine. I wanted to raise the question of patron and vendor. Are we going to keep the focus of this exclusively on employees? Or do we want, as the board, to include any additional language? Because I think that footnote does reflect the state regulations, at least. So I don't know. I mean, if a vendor came in and out of a restaurant delivering meats and was identified as a positive, I'm being hard pressed to think of the public health risk to patrons for that vendor being in the kitchen. So unlike, say, a waitress or I don't know whether, Bob, you have any ideas on that, or a patron.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think a vendor, they're usually in and out. They oftentimes come in at early hours before there's really any public in the place. But if they were in and they were positive, then you know, what I think we would want to know, and we would want them to do a deep clean. So
Would
I'm
we
not
want,
sure.
would
I'm
we
not
want, I guess the question is, should the scope of this order reflect employee, comma, patron, comma, or vendor?
That's what the state says. So we could, you know, to be more in line with what the state says, we could add that. I don't think it's going to come up very often. Hopefully, none of this comes up very often, but because oftentimes a patron may not know or remember where they ate, or, you know, I mean, they may, but they don't know that they're going to actually give all that information out.
And how would a patron even know that they did acquire the infection, or that they were, I guess it's not where they got it though. It's the patron was at the restaurant on a Saturday night, and then the restaurant heard the next day that that patron tested. I mean, how would this work?
I think it's kind of an odd thing to have in there, because the patron is going to identify their close contacts within 48 hours prior to becoming symptomatic or testing positive. And I don't know that they would identify, they might identify a waitress perhaps in a restaurant, but I don't know that they necessarily would if they were told, you know, someone you spent 15 minutes or more 6 feet apart. So I think it's kind of a stretch.
But I think, John, the exact example you were kind of suggesting, you know, I go out, I eat at a restaurant on a Friday night. On Saturday, I test positive. You know, am I going to make a call to the restaurant and say, hey, I'm just giving you a heads up. I ate there last night. I just, you know, tested COVID-19 positive. I mean, some people will do that. Others won't. They'll say, oh, you know, I wasn't in close contact with anybody at the restaurant. So, you know, it could happen. You know, the restaurant could get notified. You know, then you get into the difficulty of, all right, you know, who is the server? Is there a way to track who the server was that, you know, served that patron? And,
Really?
you know, again, would they really count as a, you know, in the contact tracing, would they really count as a close contact or not? You know, where this would say, hey, if that patron calls up, you know, ABC restaurant and says, I ate there last night and today I'm tested positive, that restaurant's now closing for 24 hours. You know, even though, you know, the CDC and others have said generally the interaction between waitresses and others in restaurants does not meet the definition of a close contact, because they're just, you know, they don't spend enough time to really prevent it. And the waitress should be wearing a mask and, you know, taking all the appropriate precautions. So, you know, I think it's a little bit of a stretch, but I just wanted to call out the fact that, you know, in the DPH guidance, it is different than what we originally drafted.
Well, this is not an easy question in my mind. It's easy to cover the employees. I think that's very easy. But do we want the reach or the scope of the order to include a patron and or a vendor? I don't know. I'd like to hear other people's feelings. Noble, what?
This is Noble. I think in the state guidelines, when they say an employee that tests positive, it's always employee, vendor, or patron. I think they always lump those three together. I could be wrong here, but I believe that's what they do. So I don't think we'd be way off base by putting those three things together. But as Bob says, the patron thing, how that comes out, you know, we don't know fully. But I think those three things are usually mentioned together by the state.
And so do you then think it would be to be consistent with that, our wording should reflect it equally? I mean, the same way?
Yeah, I think we could, and it wouldn't be stretching things any more than what the state has already talked about.
I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it, Noble, because technically you can't be less restrictive than the state. You can be more restrictive. So if the state only said, employees, you could go ahead and add patron and vendor, but where the state's already saying that, if you were to leave it out, then technically your regulation is less strict, and that may create a problem.
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Noble. So, Bob, so am I correct in that the state usually puts the three together, patron, vendor,
An employee.
employee, that they're usually lumped together? in the
Yes,
state
the
wording? Yeah.
state
Okay.
says
I think we should
worker,
just do that then.
state says worker, comma, patron, comma, or vendor.
I would do it the same way.
I'm fine with that. Anybody else on the board want to offer their view?
Gee, and I agree with what's been proposed.
Okay.
Ron Broman, I'm fine with it too.
Okay, so I think that solves that question.
Yeah, this is Noble again. Let me just go back, and I'm just kind of throwing it out there, the 4 days. So that was just kind of thrown in there in the wording, but I'm thinking that at 4 days, the VNA is probably still in the midst of his contact tracing and everything isn't out. I don't think it's a big burden to keep the posting up a little longer. I'd just throw out, a week. I mean, that's more time for more knowledge and for the situation to settle out. The Squire thing went back and forth for almost a week.
But Noble, the question is going to be, if that sign remains at the entranceways, is that going to basically kill the business until they go down?
Well, I think that, the problem is that they have a COVID positive employee and they're going through the process. To me, the question is, does a resident have the right to know that when they walk in to sit down for a couple hours for dinner, and to make their own decision? Now, not everyone, people could read that sign and say, well, okay, they've quarantined people and whatnot. I'm going to go in and have my dinner. But that the resident makes the choice, the decision for themselves. I'm comfortable with that. I don't think the extra between 4 and 7 days, I don't think that is going to change the business aspect for the restaurant that much. I guess I'm assuming that when you post that on the door, that people are still going to wind up going in there to eat. We don't know, I guess, how much it would affect it.
See, what I'm thinking is, I would like to see the notice up until such time that I am assured that the close contacts have been dutifully identified and excluded.
Well, that's fine. If that's even more than what I'm saying. And I guess that comes down to how do we determine that? Who determines that? When do Bob and Judy know that has happened? Otherwise you're guessing at a reasonable time frame that would cover it.
I
So
think
it could be a
I'm
long
pretty
time.
comfortable with the 4 days would be, more than enough for them to have contacted everyone. I mean, I know the VNA gets on this, and once they have it, they're doing it within 1 to 2 days max.
So
This is Noble. Well, that's quite different than what John just said, though, because until you get all the information, how long might that be?
We could be long gone by then, on some of them.
Well, I mean, the public health protection afforded the community is by virtue of excluding the identified case immediately, and a quick identification of other potential close contacts and exclusion of them as well. After those two things happen, it would seem to me, and after the deep cleaning, then the restaurant should be safe for anybody to go back into, and they should be comfortable.
This is Noble. So does Judy hear when the VNA has finished its contact tracing for an event like a restaurant employee?
I mean, they don't call me and say that they're done, but I usually follow, it's usually done as a cluster in Maven, and I follow the cases. And the contacts are sent to me via Maven. So as soon as I see that there's no more being added, then I know that they've contacted everyone.
So Judy, you'd be comfortable finding out when that's been done and then somehow communicating that to the restaurant as to when they can stop posting?
Yeah,
And then, or you could say at least 4 days and what you have to do?
I mean, we could say for a minimum of 96 hours or until all close contacts have been notified. Something like that. I mean, that,
And then that would leave you the job of telling the restaurant when they can take their public notices down.
yeah. I mean, I'm usually in pretty close contact with the restaurant anyways when this happens.
I'm happy with that if we say 4 days plus what you're doing and leave it that way. I think that's pretty good.
Okay.
I mean,
I can
I mean, that's my thought. I don't know what the other people think.
I'm comfortable with that.
I don't think we can be perfect on this. I mean,
Right.
it is what it is,
Right.
We'll do the
Yeah.
best we can.
But I like the idea of the 4 days and plus Judy lets them know when, the contact tracing has been completed and they can take the notices down. But not less than 4 days, I guess.
Okay.
Right.
I can add some of that language in there.
Was that the last, I think that was the last kind of wording question I had in my mind. Does anyone else want to? If not, I'd like to invite Elaine Gibbs to have some input, and anyone else that's on the call that would like to have input.
Thank you.
Elaine, you've got the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased that the Board of Health is going to put it on their website. I think one of the problems that we've had is the rumor mill. People hear about things and they're not sure if it's true, and sometimes they get exaggerated. So I think there has to be an official notification. In terms of the 96 hours, one of the problems, we keep going back to the Squire because it was kind of like this perfect storm that happened there. If you just say 96 hours, it should be 96 hours after the last case. Because again, if you remember, the first case was on a Sunday, then the next day they had 15 tests, 3 came back, and then it was the following Friday. So it was a cluster that occurred over, 5 days. So it seems to me like a week, number one, would be better. I would prefer it, we talked about it before, that I don't think a restaurant should open if they have pending cases where there's been close contact. The problem being is that, they can say, well, the first 15 we tested did not have anything to do with the other 15, but you don't know until the next positive cases come, then you have to do the close contacts of those people. So that next 3, then you have to start over and say, well, now they may have been in contact with other people in the restaurant. So to contain it, it seems to me that the restaurant should be closed longer than 24 hours if there are pending close contact tests awaiting results. The other thing that, I talked about before, the 15 minutes and the 6 feet, and I'm sorry, I've heard the CDC stuff. Those guidelines are for walking down the street, going into retail stores, that kind of thing. It is a lot different in restaurants because they are dealing with food and surfaces. And if you read it, they do say that, wait staff should be wearing gloves. And I think you can understand that it doesn't matter. Wait staff could be, 6 feet away, but they're not always because they have to serve the food. And not be in direct contact for 15 minutes, but because the remedy is to close a restaurant down to deep cleaning and fogging, tells you that stuff is passed on surfaces. So if a person has it and they are delivering food and they are setting tables and drinking glasses and silverware, it's passed that way. And what bothered me is not one person of a patron of those 1,000 people that went through there were considered a close contact under the 6 feet, 15-minute rule, but all of them, had plates served by people who ultimately had COVID. So I would prefer it if, you had to test the people before you open it up. But if you're not going to do that, I think that the sign on the door has to say 96 hours after the last positive test within the cluster, because they had to keep testing people all throughout the week. I don't know. I know there's no answer, but I think that the restaurants are different than retail stores. It's a lot more intimate environment, and so we have to be careful. So anyway, thank you. And we're going into the inside now. I think we're going to see an increase in numbers, sadly, because we're not going to be able to have a lot of outdoor eating. So we got to be a little bit more careful in terms of that too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Anyone
John,
else? Yes.
go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to, in response to what Elaine said, that, the close contacts are regardless of whether they test positive or negative, are required to stay out for 14 days. So, I don't see that closing until all your testing is done is really helping the matter, because they have to stay out of the place for 14 days anyways. I suppose if you had new cases pop up, you could add the 96 hours or the posting to continue after that date. And then, as far as waitresses wearing gloves and touching surfaces, there's very little evidence that this is being passed in that manner. I did send you some videos for some scientists that talk about the spread of the virus through droplets through the air, which is much more prevalent. And once the place is cleaned and fogged, you're going to have very little issues with that. So that's all I wanted to say.
If I could just make one correct, maybe I wasn't too clear on this. My point being on the close contacts is that the initial close contacts were tested. There were 15 of them. Once they got 3 more positives, those 3 people could have had additional close contacts that were still working. That's my point, that it is kind of an exponential thing. You didn't know at first that those 3 people were going to be positive, so you didn't ask who their close contacts were. So once you identify those, then you have to go through the process again. So there may have been people that were working, and then that gets into another whole category. And yes, then they all do have to, obviously do the 14 days. But it's just that interim period until when you have an episode, an outbreak in a restaurant. I think it's different than having, a kid in college, let's say. This is a lot more intimate with a lot more public coming through the doors.
All right. Does anyone else from the community wish to comment before the board progresses with this? Judy, do you have a marked up version of this order that reflects the discussion we had tonight in terms of the changes in wording, or is this something that we need to?
I don't know if Bob's been able to do that. I have not, because I had it up on my screen, so I didn't want to start writing over it. But I can summarize some of the changes, and we could vote to approve it with the changes and as discussed.
Okay. Then let's try that. Let's try enumerating 1, 2, 3, 4, each of the revisions that the board has decided they'd like to make.
All right. Well, I was going to say, why don't I start off, Judy, because I've been kind of marking up my copy.
Perfect.
And then you can jump in with anything that I may have missed. So the first change, and these changes are all in the bold-faced paragraphs in the middle. They're weren't any other changes that I'm aware of to the rest of the document. So all food service establishments shall notify the public of the incidence of any confirmed positive cases of COVID-19 among its employees and staff by physically posting, comma, conspicuously at each entrance, comma, written notice thereof at the establishment, on the establishment's website, and or on social media. Said notice shall be posted immediately upon receipt by the established management of notification of the positive cases, and said posting shall be maintained for a minimum of 96 hours or until all contact tracing is completed.
Perfect.
All food service establishments shall immediately close for 24 hours. And this is where I'm not quite sure how we want the wording to go. All food service establishments shall immediately close for 24 hours. I had for deep cleaning and disinfection upon notification to establishment management of a confirmed case of COVID-19 among its employees and staff, patron or vendor. And in period. You know, we could take the language about deep, in accordance with CDC guidelines and move that up. So it would say all food service establishments shall immediately close for 24 hours for deep cleaning and disinfection in accordance with CDC guidelines prior to reopening upon notification. And then the rest of that sentence. So basically the sentence would end after employees and staff, comma, patron, comma, vendor, period.
Now, Bob, if we're going to include those three, which I think we are, they should be included in the first paragraph as well, among its employees, comma.
Yep, yeah, we can add those in up there as well. Yep, you're right.
This is Noble. Yeah, Bob, so isn't it that we're mandating a 24-hour closure and a deep clean and disinfecting before reopening? They can do the deep cleaning and disinfecting when they want, but it has to be done before reopening, and they have to be closed at least 24 hours. But you could just simply say 24-hour closure, and they have to close for 24 hours and deep clean prior to opening. Does that
Yeah, so here's what I have. All food service establishments shall immediately close for 24 hours for deep cleaning and disinfection or disinfecting in accordance with CDC guidelines prior to reopening upon notification
Right.
to the establishment management of a confirmed case of COVID-19 among its employees, staff, patron, or vendor. So basically, I'm taking the last part of that sentence and moving it up to the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Noble, but we don't want to mandate that they must disinfect within the 24 hours. They just have to do that before they open again. I mean, suppose they can't get somebody in there in 24 hours, they have to do it the next day.
Okay, I see. All right, I see what you're saying. Yes, all right.
It's like an extra, it's like we're requiring them that they have to do the deep clean in 24 hours, which they may or may not be able to do.
Okay, yep, you're right. Yeah, yeah.
Do we want to say shall immediately close for a minimum of 24 hours upon notification?
Well, close 24 hours and do a deep clean prior to reopening.
Okay.
24 hours and do a deep clean, yeah.
Okay, and undertake a deep cleaning and disinfection in accordance with CDC guidelines prior to reopening,
Right.
comma,
Doesn't that cover it simply?
Yeah, I think that does. Yeah. It separates the 24-hour closure from the deep clean.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. It doesn't prevent them from doing the deep clean during the 24-hour closure, because that's what we were trying to prevent. Because originally it said they had to close 24 hours and then do the deep cleaning.
Exactly.
Which, yeah,
Let me think about this though. Are we doing the same thing we had the problem with before?
no, I think it just covers, we're not mandating that they do the deep clean within the 24 hours. They have to close 24 hours and then they do the deep clean whenever they can do it, but they can't open until that deep clean is done.
Right, okay. But they could do the deep cleaning within the 24-hour period.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. But they have to close,
24 hours.
they have to close for 24 hours irrespective of if they do the deep cleaning and disinfection within the 24-hour period.
Correct.
So they can't open any earlier than 24 hours.
Correct.
Do we want to say for a minimum 24 hours?
Yeah, I think, John, I think you're right. I think you want to say for a minimum of 24 hours.
Right.
Okay, I think we've got it.
Can you read it now from the top, Bob, from all food service?
Does Judy have her hand up or is that an old one?
Judy?
No, I'm all set.
Okay.
All right, so you want me to read through the whole thing again?
One
Just
last time. Yep.
Just the bolded parts, right? All right. All food service establishments shall notify the public of the incidence of any confirmed positive cases of COVID-19 among its employees and staff, patrons, or vendors by physically posting, comma, conspicuously at each entrance, comma, written notice thereof at the establishment, on the establishment's website, and/or social media. Said notice shall be posted immediately upon receipt by the establishment's management of notification of a positive cases, and said posting shall be maintained for a minimum of 96 hours or until all contact tracing is completed, period.
Okay.
Next paragraph. All food service establishments shall immediately close for a minimum of 24 hours and undertake a deep cleaning and disinfection in accordance with CDC guidelines prior to reopening upon notification to establishment management of a confirmed case of COVID-19 among its employees and staff or patrons or vendors, period.
I think that's it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think that's it.
So, is it the pleasure of the board that we entertain a motion to pass this new declaration of public health emergency order?
This is
Ron
Noble
Drummond,
Song.
I'd like to make a motion
Okay.
that we approve the information that Dr. Duncanson just read to us.
And then we should probably read the whereas at the top. And we should probably read the balance of it too for the record.
I don't think it's necessary that you read it. I could just, say, as part of the motion, you could say, just as amended.
Okay,
The rest of it all stays the same as it was presented to you.
okay,
Okay, I'll modify it to as amended.
okay. Do we have a second?
Yeah, just Noble, I would second that.
All right. Further discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion from the public before the board votes?
John, I think there's one thing we didn't do. When do you want this to take effect? Generally, what Judy's done in the past, when you folks have passed things, is we make it effective at 12:01 a.m. Thursday. So it would take effect at basically midnight on Thursday night, Wednesday, Thursday. So it's effective on Thursday.
Okay,
Sounds good, Noble?
sounds fine to me.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, let's call the question then. When I call your name, please indicate your vote on the motion and its second. Dr. Noble Hanson,
Approve?
Ron Broman,
Approve.
Ed Sheehan,
Approve.
and I approve. So the motion carries, and it's adopted. Alan Ward, did you want to have any comments, Alan, as an auditing Board of Health alternate? Maybe Alan's no longer with us.
I
Okay,
think we lost Alan.
okay. We do have 2 minutes to approve, review and approve. The first would be the September 15th joint meeting between the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health. We have a copy of the minutes in our packet. I saw no need for edits, but anybody else want to recommend any edits or changes in that document? September 15th. Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes as prepared?
Ed Sheehan, approve.
Do I have a second?
Noble, second?
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate how you vote on the adoption or the approval of the minutes for the September 15th meeting. Dr. Noble Hanson,
Approve?
Ron Broman,
Approve.
Ed Sheehan,
Approve.
and I approve, John Beckley. Okay, item number 2 on the approvals, we have a Board of Health minutes document that was in our packets, September 21st, 2020, 4 p.m. Any edits or changes or corrections recommended in this summary? I don't see any. If not, can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Ed Sheehan.
Do we have a second?
Noble, second?
Okay, let's go ahead and vote on these minutes. Dr. Noble Hanson,
Approve?
Ron Broman,
Approve.
Ed Sheehan,
Approve.
and I approve, John Beckley. So we've approved both sets of minutes. We've worked through the agenda. Does anybody else have anything, any final comments or questions or issues they want to raise at this time?
Yes, I do. I think our pay should be doubled.
Okay. All right, well, thanks. That's good, Ron. Can I get a
Okay,
motion to adjourn?
Ed Sheehan, adjourn.
Do I get a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. When I call your name, please indicate how you vote on the motion to adjourn. Dr. Hanson,
Adjourn?
Ron Broman,
Yes.
Ed Sheehan,
Yes.
and I vote yes to adjourn. So that ends the meeting tonight. Thank you, everyone, for your input. We did a good thing tonight, and I think we worked hard on it. So thank you, everyone, for your input. Take care.
Thank you, John.